You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and today I'm solo. All right, so what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to try to figure out if I have a book to recommend and some good advice at the end, because, you know, I always like that at the end of the podcast episode is somebody giving us the best advice they've ever received and the book recommendation that God only allowed them to retain the knowledge in one book. What would that book be? So I know that without a guest, I won't have those two questions at the end. But we're going to get through some great information. And the title is Why Financial Freedom Isn't the Goal, It's the Starting Line. Okay. And I think it's important because everybody thinks that we try to get to this top of this mountain and just stop. You know, that's what they want us to believe with retirement is we climb the mountain, meaning we accumulate a certain amount of money. And then once we have that money, we just distribute it and we go down the mountain and we hope we get to the bottom of the mountain, meaning we die before we run out of money. So we get down the mountain safely. And there's all these perils that happen on the way down. And in fact, this happens in mountain climbing. And if I said to you, who's the first person to climb Mount Everest, you would say immediately, Sir Edmund Hillary. Well, that's actually not true. There was another person, I think it was like 8 or 10 years earlier, that climbed the mountain, made it to the peak, the summit of Mount Everest, and then froze on the way down. So they didn't get knighted. And by the way, Sir Edmund Hillary never climbed Mount Everest, because he wasn't Sir Edmund Hillary then. He was just Edmund Hillary. He got knighted because he made it down safely, right? So most people that die on the way down from Mount Everest and K2, which is the most dangerous mountain to climb in the world, they die on the way down, okay? And so getting to your goal of like accumulating this money or something isn't it. That's not the end. And financial freedom isn't the end. It's just the starting line. So most people think financial freedom is just a dream. But what if I told you that's where the game really starts? And let's break away today from this small thinking, okay? All right, so the small thinking, financial freedom or retirement. Retirement is a Wall Street trap. Right? They want you to save your money for 20, 30, 40 years, right? They get a fee and expenses, and everybody treats you like you're the host and they're the parasite for 20, 30, 40 years. They're living off of you, okay? Which is, then as you're distributing the money, they're either going to sell you a really expensive annuity to guarantee some income, or they're going to put you in a conservative investment portfolio so that you don't run out of money, or using the Monte Carlo method, which is what they normally do, the method that they use, which is running thousands of simulations, what you could take out without running out of money. And they'll do that every year and they'll update it and everything else because, you know, you want to pay them their 1% or whatever they're charging you. And for your whole life, your whole adult life, they will make money from you, the host. They're the parasite. But real freedom equals choice, control, and ownership. Okay? You don't escape the rat race just to sit still. You escape the rat race to build. Once you realize that that's not the goal, now it's time to build. Okay, so like if we think of the shift from escape to ownership, right? Escape equals relief, ownership equals power. Once you've got time and money freedom, now what? That's where the build the game begins. And you you have to revisit, or if you haven't heard this, our freedom formula, which is other people's time plus other people's money plus other people's effort equals financial freedom. Okay. Financial freedom, infinite leverage equals breakaway wealth. That's what this show is all about. I remember when I've explained infinite banking for the last 20 whatever years to people, and I see the doubt in their eyes when I really say you can stop exchanging time for money. They don't believe me, but they really want to believe me. And the people that have said, you know what, I'm going to take this leap of faith. I'm going to start doing infinite banking. I'm going to start controlling the banking function, and I'm going to jump in. Those people, somewhere along the line, they get financial freedom. And once they get financial freedom, then they think, well, you know what? I could do this again and again and again, and I can really start to build. Okay. So what are the power moves once you're in that post-freedom? Okay. One is be the bank, not the borrower. So infinite banking, Nelson Nash, taking over the banking function is you got to remember how a bank works. You have a depositor, you have the owner of the bank, and you have the borrower. In the traditional system, you're the two outside entities. You're the depositor and the borrower, sometimes from the same bank, right? So they're actually loaning you your own money, because there's really only one banking system in the world. Okay. So what most people don't get is they're not that owner. But as long as you can own the bank, meaning you make all the decisions on the deposits, on the borrowing, what interest flows where, you make all those decisions. Now you're your own banker and you are in control. Okay. So assets fund impact, not lifestyle. Talk about buying, when you talk about buying businesses and real estate and everything else, the once you get past that lifestyle need, right? Once you get more money flowing in than you need on a monthly or annual basis, then you look to see what kind of impact can I have on other people? How can I serve other people? How can I serve my family? And then you teach that system. Don't hoard it. Show other people what you've done. And legacy is built through mentorship, family systems, ownership, right? You're teaching someone else how to get what you have, which is what they want, which is freedom. That's how you break away from the herd. That's how you have breakaway wealth. So, the thing that when I think back through my life is when I started a business and I started looking at how the cash flow started to build. And in the beginning, it was like in this one company, it was like $50,000 or $60,000. And I thought, well, that's okay. That's pretty good, right? I don't have to go to work there. I do have to handle some questions. I do have to handle some stress. I'm at risk. Okay. And is it worth $50,000 or $60,000? Maybe it wasn't at that time. But I thought, okay, how do we get that 50 to 60 and have it built? The first couple of years were kind of flat. It was like 50 or 60, 50 or 60. And when I looked at my rate of return or rate on investment, then I wasn't really happy with that, right? It was like lower than 10%. But then working on the company and going through just how to expand, be more profitable, institute contracts and profit margin minimums, and cut down on costs and everything else, it went from like 50 to 60 to 100 to 150 to 200 to 400 to 500. And at 500, let's just stop there. Okay. Now that didn't happen overnight. I'm saying each year. So that might have been 5, 6, 7 years in. But at that point, $500,000 coming in from an asset that I didn't spend any time in is pretty good. And it was just growing from there, right? Are there going to be ups and downs? Yes. I mean, I'm not going to go spend that 500. I'm going to go put some of it in my infinite banking system so that I know I have it for opportunities and emergencies. So it didn't happen overnight, but it happened to where, okay, if everything else ended and I couldn't talk and I couldn't teach people about infinite banking, that asset would take care of me and it would pay my bills. And my lifestyle just isn't that fancy. So it was more than I needed to be financially independent. So then the stuff with Create Tailwind and everything that business does and the other businesses, I could use those businesses and everything that I've built since then for impact. Is how do I impact the things that I care about, whether it's the kingdom, whether it's family, whether it's charities that I care about. Okay, now it's up to me. Guess who controls all that money flow? I do. Okay, so I wasn't lost doing what I was doing. I wasn't lost being a financial planner and being part of Wall Street. I was just called to do more, right? My God-given edge was to do more. And if you've hit financial freedom or you're chasing it, don't stop short. Okay. In our book, the ownership, in the new book, Ownership, there's an action plan. Okay. So it's something that builds and it lasts. Don't just escape the rat race, dominate, change the rules of the game, right? And I think that that's the thing that I want people to take away from this today is how do I change the game, right? Okay, it's this shift of retirement is not my goal, financial freedom, financial independence. Freedom and independence mean I can do what I want to do when I want to do it, right? And does it, even if it takes some effort, I've told the story of when I was 13 years old and working in a casket factory and swinging a hammer for 8 hours a day. Dwayne McIntyre, the owner of the business, Dwayne would come in a couple hours here, a couple hours there. I don't really know. I mean, that's when I noticed him, right? He would pull weeds on a Saturday morning in a rental house occasionally. And maybe he just liked to do those kinds of things because he probably could have hired somebody to pull those weeds, right? Even if the lady that lived in the house was elderly and didn't take care of it. So he could have done a lot of different things. He could have read Buy Back Your Time and hired somebody else to do it. But for whatever reason, he did it. But was he killing himself doing it? No. He was putting a little bit of effort in there to get a lot of return. How much return? Enough to live in Palos Verdes, enough to send 4 adopted kids to Pepperdine University, enough to live the lifestyle that he wanted to live and really have the impact that he wanted to have. So he was a business owner, right? Made money. I never had a conversation with him about this, but adopting children was obviously important to him. So that's impact, right? So the impact started when he had the financial freedom. And so don't think of financial freedom as the end goal. It's the beginning. And the beginning for you today is deciding, how am I going to get from wherever I am today to financial freedom and financial independence? And then once I do, what does my life look like then? Right? What is my vision of what I'm going to be doing? And how am I going to be having impact? Am I going to adopt 4 kids? Well, I'm probably not it. almost 60 years old. But there are other ways to have big impact. And guess what? You're in control of that. So you're in control of the vision. If you haven't started doing infinite banking, you need to start now. Okay, because you need to control that banking function. You need to control the flow of the money. You need to control the velocity of the money, which is how many times your money can work for you and how fast it can work for you. And you got to control the direction. Okay, that's where your God-given edge comes in. Okay, so it's once you control all of those things, then you have a system on creating financial freedom. Once you have financial freedom, now you can create your impact, your vision for impact, or your impact vision. Okay, I like that, impact vision. So if you could draw it up any way you want to, because you can, even if you're 60 like me and you're just getting started, it's okay. Right? We can have such an impact in 5 years, 7 years. Just like going back to the business that I described. Didn't sound like much. Gosh, seems like maybe it's too much risk in the beginning for the reward. But what happened is it built and it compounded slowly, but then it got to be pretty big and pretty amazing. So that's the message today for this podcast episode: is financial freedom is the start, not where you finish. And impact and how big you can make that impact is the goal, is the vision. And I remember a great friend of mine a few years ago challenged me. He said, "Jim, you should impact billions of people with your message." And I said, "Gosh, billions of people, that's a pretty tall order." And he said, "I think that's what God wants you to do." And I said, "Did God tell you how I was going to do that?" And obviously life wouldn't be that much fun if we had all the answers, right? And so, I've just thought about that. It's like stuck in my head. Jim, you have to impact billions of people, or 1 billion people. And really working on trying to figure out, how do I impact 1 billion people? So I'd love your feedback if you want to give me some feedback on that. So back to I'm going to give you some of the best advice anybody ever gave me. And I'm going to give you a book that it's not if I could only have one book, because I think everybody's heard my one book, which was Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And the reason that it's Jonathan Livingston Seagull, if you never had to read it, which I had to read it in school, and it was actually one of those books that I did read most of it, and I didn't just BS my way through, oh, he's a seagull, and let me check out. I didn't do that. I actually read it because I was intrigued. And the reason I was intrigued is Jonathan Livingston Seagull is a seagull, but he doesn't want to just do the things that seagulls do. He doesn't want to just eat, fly here, stay within this thing, and when you fly, it's from here to there. He wanted to do tricks, and he wanted to show off and do acrobatics and everything. And it doesn't matter that he wanted to show off. The key is he didn't want to do what all the other seagulls were doing. That impacted me because I was living in a very poor neighborhood. I didn't want to stay poor. I didn't want to be like all the other seagulls. I wanted to break away from that herd of seagulls. And it gave me almost like this permission. It motivated me to say, hey, see, Richard Bach wrote this in this book, and this is how you do it. And in fact, Richard Bach had a follow-up book called Illusions. And I think it's like Tales of a Reluctant Messiah or something like that. And the whole book is a good book, but what's brilliant in my mind is the story at the beginning of the book. And this is what I wanted to share. So it's not a book that it wouldn't be the only book that I would have God let me have the knowledge from, or retain the knowledge from. But it would be a book that I would read that story in the beginning and remind myself. Okay. So I'm going to give you kind of an overview of the story. So the story is that there are these creatures that live in this crystal stream. And the stream brings the creatures everything that they need. They cling to the rocks and the roots, and the stream brings them everything they need to eat and everything that they need in their lives, and they're comfortable. As long as they cling, they're safe, right? So this one little creature, he says, I can't cling anymore. I have to let go. And I want to see where this crystal stream will take me. There's got to be something more than just clinging in my life forever. And all the other creatures, they ridicule him, all the ones in his village, right? And they say, you fool, that stream that you worship surely will beat you and batter you, and surely you'll die. And he hears this, and he hears this, and he hears this, and he finally says, but if I stay here clinging, I'm going to die of boredom. And I don't want I don't want to look back on my life and think, I was a clinger. I was bored most of my life. I don't want to be like that either. But so the little creature, what does he do? He lets go. Let's go. And yes, that stream beat him, battered him, but it didn't kill him. It actually, he went down the stream and it lifted him up. And he was flying down the stream, flying. And he was seeing everything that life had to give him. He was seeing reality for the first time, the way God really wants us to live our lives. And down a little bit down the stream, he sees this other village of creatures, and the creatures yell out to him, Messiah, come to save us. Okay. And that's kind of where the story ends, or in my mind anyway. You'll have to go on and read it. I know it's online. You could pull it up. I'm sure ChatGPT could give you the everything in the story. But why are they yelling Messiah? And they said, creature that looks like us, yet he flies. And we do that because the people that truly let go, Elon Musk, Bezos, any of those guys that own their own business, that are being innovative, that are doing things that nobody else is thinking about, we worship those people. We worship them because we want to be like that. And we're just afraid. We're clinging. So the two books are The Story in the Beginning of Illusions, which is by Richard Bach, and The Magic of Thinking Big. Because the thing that we do to stop ourselves from having everything that we want is we think too small. Hey, what are we going to have for dinner? I'll tell you what, Friday night, we're going to go out and have a steak. Like all of that stuff doesn't matter to me. I want to think bigger, and I still think too small because I haven't figured out a way yet to impact 1 billion people, which means my thinking is too small, but I'm working on it every day to get it bigger and bigger and bigger, and get that vision bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's a magic of thinking big. So that's the book for today, The Magic of Thinking Big. Dr. David Schwartz, is that right? I think it's right. Yeah, Dr. David Schwartz. So that's the book. Now, what's the best advice anybody's ever given me? Well, I don't know if it's the best advice anybody's ever given me, but it's great advice. And here it is. I learned it in Kansas, in Mission, Kansas, at McDonald's. Okay, and I'd like to say I didn't eat McDonald's back then in my early 20s, but I did. Okay, but I was sitting there with a guy who was trying to sell me Amway. Do you remember those days? As soon as they started drawing out the circles, you're like, oh, I'm in an Amway dream. I got to get out of here. Multi-level marketing has never been my thing. And I've been hit up for that a few times in my life. And every time I just have to smile. But in my 20s, I didn't know any better. But the guy that was hitting me up, he was the janitor from Gold's Gym. And I've never told this part of the story, but the reason he was a janitor is he had to pay restitution because he got into a bar fight and literally bit somebody's nose off. Okay. And, so this tells you where I was in my early 20s. Okay. This is like 20, maybe 19, 20, 21 at the latest. And I'm taking my advice from a janitor who has to do court restitution for biting somebody's nose off in a bar fight. Okay, now that's just telling you that God's message comes to you in all shapes and forms. And don't judge a book by its cover. And it doesn't even matter who this advice came from, but it was so impactful. And this advice that he said to me, he just simply said to me, Jim, if you read about something for an hour a day in 6 weeks, you'll be an expert in that subject. Now, I didn't know if that was true or not. I'm not even telling you it's true now. But what it did is it got me reading an hour a day about something, not about a novel, not about, but about something, a skill, an idea, a thought, something. And it changed my life, that advice. Now, I've heard a lot of people give me what is the best advice they've ever received. And there's some great ones out there. And maybe one of these days we'll compile all of that into a podcast episode. And maybe that's a great idea. But that's my advice today is read an hour a day on something that intrigues you. Listen to a podcast for an hour a day, something that you're learning something about. Learn about a subject. I'm really studying peptides right now and what peptides do for our bodies and our minds and our recovery and anti-aging and longevity. And it's really cool. Now, am I an expert? Well, it hasn't been 6 weeks, but I know a lot more than most people after only a few weeks. And I am studying other things during that time too, which, more health-related things, how to build muscle at 59 years old, watching other people build muscle, talking to people in the gym that are around my age or older that are still building muscle. What are you doing? What are you taking? What are your training protocols? Not because I'm going to do exactly what they're doing, because I'm just gathering information to see what works for me. So read an hour a day. All right. So there's I don't know if this is the first podcast that I've done without interviewing somebody or having a co-host, but we're going to do more of these because I hope you got something out of this today. And if you didn't get anything out of this, that's okay. You're not going to offend me, but you're going to get something out of the outro is what they call it, right? How we finish the show, because we're going to finish this the way we always finish Breakaway Wealth podcast, is with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale and The Strangest Secret. So take it away, Earl, and thank you all for being here.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.